Now onwards to our second witness, James McCormick. James is the head of the International Nuclear Team at the UK government's Counter-Proliferation and Arms Control Centre, CPAC, which is rather difficult to say, but hopefully I get the hang of it. So CPAC consolidates in a single location expertise in policy making on international counter-proliferation and arms controls issues. They draw on the expertise of several different government departments and ministries. James has previously served diplomatic postings in the Middle East and Africa, but tonight he's with us. Thank you so much, James, and with an equally thunderous round of virtual applause, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear and see me okay. So let me start by thanking you all very much for the opportunity to take part in today's event. I'd like to pay particular tribute to the Under-Secretary General for his excellent introduction at the beginning and for his tireless work on the anniversary within the UN over the past few years, particularly last year. I'd like to thank David and the team for putting the event together, Lauren, you for moderating, and of course, Rebecca for joining me on the panel as we discuss this important issue today. I mean, this comes at an extremely challenging period for all of us as we're seeking to deal with the challenge of COVID-19. Like in academic and many other parts of life, so too in diplomacy. Here in the Foreign Office, we are working very differently to deliver our work day to day. Yet whilst COVID-19 dominates the international picture, the issues of national security and international security, as we've heard, are as compelling and as important as ever. And therefore, it is absolutely critical that we come together in forums like this to discuss solutions to the problems that we all face. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So the question today then is, should the UK join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons? I'm here today to answer the question with a clear no. But let me be clear from the outset. The UK shares the aspirations set out by the first speaker. We all agree that we do not ever want to see nuclear conflict, and the UK is committed to the long-term goal of a world without nuclear weapons and continues to tirelessly press for key steps towards multilateral disarmament. It's so important. The key question is, how do we get there? And this is not a question of state-centric realism versus international idealism or anything like that. The UK is a firm champion of multilateralism. My department works every day with the international community to make progress in tackling the threat from weapons of mass destruction. And at the heart of that work are loads of treaties and conventions which protect international security and all of our safety. Treaties are essentially agreements between states that improve how we work and solve common problems which afflict us all. An effective treaty on strategic issues like nuclear weapons must have some components to it. It must have consensus among some of the relevant parties. It must provide practical solutions to the objectives it seeks to achieve, and to be firmly embedded within the existing international architecture. Nuclear weapons have emerged and persisted for a reason. The key cause in the literature is the security dilemma in international politics, which causes states to seek to defend themselves out of concern of other countries' intentions. A treaty which does not tackle this inherent problem will not succeed. That is why effective treaties, such as the 1970 Non-Proliferation Treaty, are drafted with great effort and farsightedness. The Non-Proliferation Treaty is the cornerstone of everything that we do on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. And that's because it provides a key framework to actually progress that work. There's a commitment in there to pursue negotiations in good faith towards disarmament, and on a treaty on complete disarmament under strict and effective international control. Crucially, it recognizes that lack of trust, that fear, that security dilemma, which needs to be resolved, and easing tension and strengthening trust between states is necessary if we are to get to the point where we can disarm. It also has a clear commitment from non-nuclear weapon states not to develop nuclear weapons, supported by a system of steadily increasing safeguards to ensure that the countries are able to comply. And in return, there are benefits for all state parties in terms of being able to get support to develop the peaceful use of energy, which is so important both to those countries commercially, but also in terms of tackling climate change today. And the question of that treaty, the treaty which we work on, is it working? And for me, it's an emphatic, yes, it is working. In the middle of the 20th century, it was feared that dozens of nuclear weapon states might emerge. Instead, the Non-Proliferation Treaty has seen a remarkable near 30 states abandon their pursuit of nuclear weapons. Global stockpiles have been reduced by close to 80% since their Cold War peak, and it has provided the safeguards that allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to report on Iran's non-compliance with the NPT, and a framework for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which we are seeking to use to bring Iran back into compliance. And there have been so many benefits for state parties in terms of improving their own peaceful nuclear industries, and also the security of those industries as well, to ensure that they are protected from things like terrorism. And it's not just this framework. It was a catalyst for a whole range of other activities. Key arms control agreements between the US and Russia, which have steadily seen their warheads reduce, and there are negotiations going on at the moment with the US administration to renew them. A comprehensive test ban treaty which bans all nuclear testing when it comes into force, and much more to come. That is why the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the framework it provides is rightly perceived as a flagship for the international community's determination to deal with this very, very real problem. And it is vital that we, here in the UK, do all that we can to protect and strengthen it. For those who are interested, and the history of this is important, in 2020, the UK joined with the US and Russia to publish a whole archive of previously classified documents from the original NPT negotiations. Do read them if you are interested. The papers show three global powers coming together over a period of time deliberately and setting aside their Cold War convictions and investing in global security for generations to come. Which brings us to the treaty we're discussing today, the TPNW. In contrast, from our perspective to the NPT, the negotiations on the TPNW took just 4 weeks. And from our perspective, the text of the treaty is ambiguous and is not clear on how it seeks to achieve its goals. Firstly, critically, the treaty simply ignores the security context and provides no suggestion for how we should increase trust and transparency between nuclear weapons states to allow them to disarm, which is fundamentally the key problem which we are working on in disarmament and how we want to get there. And despite calling for disarmament, the ban treaty does not address the considerable technical and procedural challenges involved in nuclear disarmament verification. Even if there were a deal tomorrow, you actually have to have trust between the parties that it will be implemented because of the security issues which are involved. And that requires a firm verification mechanism. Despite the immediacy of the treaty and how it wants to set out its goals, it doesn't provide the detail for how that would be achieved. It also needlessly overlaps with other treaties like the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty by including another prohibition on nuclear weapons testing, but without the additional measures within the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, such as inspections, which would actually make it work. And then finally, the TPNW risks creating confusion in the international community. It has an alternative system for the safeguards I talked about before for the International Atomic Energy Agency, which would confuse their mandate. They don't have the resources to do additional work which is within the treaty. And it doesn't push for the new accepted current global standard, which is the additional protocol, which is much safer, and it is not there. Consequently, from our perspective, this treaty will not result in the elimination of a single weapon. But worse, we fear it will create divisions in the international community, which will make progress among states even more difficult. And crucially, we do worry that it's going to undermine and weaken the Non-Proliferation Treaty. To have competing treaties is not helpful. We want to unify everybody around the objectives of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that will become more difficult as a result. So let me turn specifically to the UK. Given all that I've said, should the UK simply sign the TPNW and unilaterally give up its nuclear arsenal today? From our perspective, that would be the worst possible option. The UK's nuclear capability forms part of NATO's collective defence to protect UK citizens and our allies. It provides a deterrent that we would only use in the most extreme circumstances of self-defence, including in defence of NATO allies. Deterrence is a very simple concept. It means that our potential aggressors know that the benefits they may seek by seeking to attack us would be outweighed by the consequences for them. And that goal that comes from that is to prevent the use of nuclear weapons, And in that, it has been hugely successful, as we have seen over the decades. So the security environment, we've heard before at the front about how things are difficult internationally at the moment, and that's absolutely right. So can we give these weapons up now? Sadly not. The threat of nuclear conflict did not go away at the end of the Cold War, and as the threats we face are increasing in scale, diversity, and complexity. For example, in 2010, NATO agreed to work constructively with Russia, one of the key nuclear weapons states. But ever since, Moscow has become more aggressive, authoritarian, and nationalist. Let's look at the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support for the Assad regime in Syria, even when that regime was using chemical weapons. Now, it may seem that these threats are far removed from our daily lives, but the erosion they point to is very real indeed. And it is vital that we maintain the capability to deter extreme acts of aggression against the UK and our NATO allies. To disarm unilaterally now would not make us safer, nor would it make the use of nuclear weapons less likely, which is the key point. Indeed, it would remove the deterrent that for 60 years has helped to stop others using nuclear weapons, including against us. A world in which potential aggressors like Russia have nuclear weapons, but we do not, is not a world in which families here in the UK are safer. Furthermore, signing the TPNW would be incompatible with our NATO membership. There are states there who would feel less safe if we got rid of our nuclear weapons, and it is one of the reasons why they have not developed their own.